Okay, so good morning, everybody. We are going to continue with our journey through the Tefillah. And today we are starting with the weekday Amidah. So, weekday Amidah starts on page 109. Today we're with the Kohen Siddur, so start page 109. Okay, so the Amidah. Been a while since we actually dealt with our material. The Amidah is the heart of every service. Is the heart of every service. When you say Shacharit, Mincha, Arvit, Musaf, Ne'ilah, doesn't matter. It's the Amidah. Amidah from the Shoresh Omed, Amad, to stand, because this is a prayer in which we always stand. This is the heart of every service. Not only that, the Talmud refers to the Shmoneh Esrei as Tefillah. Prayer is this. Everything else is like the stuff around. This is the heart of the matter. So sometimes I use the word Amidah, sometimes I use the word Shmoneh Esrei. What's the difference? Page 109. 109. What's the difference? Why am I using that? Why am I using the other word? So the word Amidah is from La'amod, to stand. This is like the general name we have for this particular prayer. On weekdays, we have 19 blessings. If you remember when we spoke about Shabbat, on Shabbat, we have 7 blessings. During the week, we have 19 blessings. The word Shmoneh Esrei in Hebrew is 18, because originally, we're going to talk about it in a couple of minutes, hopefully. Originally, this prayer had 18 blessings. Later on, it became 19. So we use the word Shmoneh Esrei to describe all the Amidot, even though it's true only in the case of the weekday Amidah. Because as we said, on Shabbat and on holidays, we have only 7 blessings. The only time that we have 9 blessings is during Musaf of Rosh Hashanah, and we have 9 blessings. Okay? And then, God willing, we'll get there one day to discuss that. And then on public fast days, like Asara B'Tevet, the fast of Esther, the 17th of Tammuz, Tzom Gedalia, all those, we add another bracha, we add another blessing, and technically it makes it into 20. Okay? So the correct term is Amidah. However, very often we use the word Shmoneh Esrei, even though it's not always one. But in the weekdays, yes, it is Shmoneh Esrei, actually 19. Fine. So what are the blessings that we have? Let's go over the names very quickly. The first one is Avot, or patriarchs. In liberal liturgy. It was a big deal. It's patriarchs and matriarchs. There's a whole discussion about that. Whatever. Gvurot, divine might. Kedushat Hashem is holiness. Then tshuva, repentance. Slicha, forgiveness. Geula, redemption. Healing, the refuah. Birkat Hashanim is prosperity. Kibbutz Galuyot, the ingathering of exile. Justice against informers. The righteous. Building of Jerusalem. Kingdom of David, response to prayer, Shomea Tfilah, temple service is Avodah, thanksgiving, and peace. These are the names of the blessings. Okay, before getting into all of them, we need to understand the structure of the Amidah. I think I mentioned that when we discussed Shabbat, but very quickly. Every Amidah, no matter what, 365 days a year, morning, evening, I don't care, when Ne'ilah, Rosh Chodesh, Rosh Hashanah, Shabbat, push it till Tuesday, I don't care what that is. Always going to have a similar structure. The structure is beginning, middle, and end. Now, the beginning and the end is always the same. Okay, sometimes we have variations on the theme, but basically is the same throughout the year. Okay, what does it mean? Beginning and end. Beginning is the first 3 blessings, and the end is the last 3 blessings. Those never change. Okay, again, we're going to have tiny variations on the theme, but generally speaking, it's the same. These are the same blessings. So wherever, whenever it is, wherever you are, I don't care what day of the week, what's going on, the first 3 blessings of the Amidah, the last 3 blessings of the Amidah are going to be the same. Okay, so if the beginning and the end never change, and everybody and all the Amidot has the same structure, then what is left? What changes? The middle. So as we said, on Shabbat we have 7 blessings. During the week we have 19. So if I have 3 in the beginning and 3 at the end that never change, that leaves what for the middle? 13. Usually 3 plus 3 is 6, right? 6 plus 13 is 19, usually. And that means on Shabbat we have only 1, because I said it's a total of 7. So usually 6 plus 1 is 7. Usually, not always. Okay. And during the week, it's going to be 13. And these are the 13 bakashot, or 13 petitions that we have in the Amidah. Okay, we ask for all sorts of stuff, 13 different asks, requests that we have from God. Okay, so that is the structure. Good. Now, if you remember, we talked about this idea of structure of prayer in general. We said that we have 3 elements: Shevach, Bakasha, and Hoda'ah. Praise, request, and thanksgiving. That's the structure. And we talked about that those themes come all the time. Where is the source for that? It's the Amidah. The Amidah is exactly structured according to that. The first 3 blessings are praise. The middle, the 13 in the middle, these are the bakashot, requests, and then the last 3 are thanksgiving. Okay? And the Talmud talks about that in the tractate of Brachot. If you want to check it out, it's page 34a. I know because I have it in my notes here. It says in the name of Rabbi Hanina, Kemo Eved, like a servant. When you have, forget about servants. We don't know about servants anymore. We live in 2025. Let's assume you work for whatever, for a firm, company, whatever, and you want something. You want a raise. You want a raise. So you knock on the door of your boss, or maybe you scheduled an appointment in advance, and you're not going to say, "Hey, I want a raise." You don't start from that. Say, listen, I've been here a long time. You are such a wonderful boss. You have a vision. You are a leader. I'm sure you value my work. Okay, that's the sheva. That's the praise. Then you get to the matter itself. Therefore, I want to raise. And finally, you say, thank you. Right? That's usually how we do things. Well, guess what? That's exactly the structure of the Amidah. Okay. If you remember a long time ago, we said, actually, today I said that the Talmud calls the Amidah tefillah, prayer. And we said that a long time ago, we said that the word tefillah comes from the shoresh, from the root palal. And palal is what? Is to self-reflect. So that means, why do I need to do all that stuff? Why do I need to say all those requests? You know why? It's not for God. God knows what I need. God can read my mind. It's for me. I need to go through that process to really think about what is it that I need in my life? What is it that I really, really ask for? Okay? So it's a process of figuring out what's important to me and what's not important to me. And what the rabbis came up with is 13 requests that we believe cover pretty much every aspect of life. However, if somebody feels that their requests are not expressed here, then they have an obligation to add it. And technically, we can talk about that, where exactly you add it. There are a couple of opinions. One opinion said, well, if it's connected to the themes of one of the blessings, then you do that at that point. Okay, very famous example. Look at page. Look at the top of page 119. Okay. So you have the blessing of healing. However, somebody wants to pray on behalf of a particular person, then you have the insert here where you include the name of the person, etc. Okay? And a lot of people do that. So it is a personal addition into the Amidah. And since it is part of the theme of the blessing, it is inserted inside the blessing. A little bit less popular example, but still practical. People who go through financial hardship, for example, should say something about that, ask God for help during the following blessing, the bottom of 119. Okay, because that is the blessing that talks about prosperity, financial mainly, materialistic. Okay. Different approach says, no. We're not really sure that people know whether their personal requests are part of the theme of the blessing. Therefore, personal requests should be added only in the bottom of 125, Shomea Tefillah. That is a general blessing asking God to hear our prayers. And if you have something specific, you add it over there. Okay, that's okay. That works as well if you're not sure exactly. And then some opinions, even more strict, and they say, no. If you have personal requests, you know where you're going to add them? On page 135. After completing all the 19 blessings, however, you're still in the Amidah. This is the time to add personal requests. Okay, so let me summarize what we just said. Everybody agrees that if anyone feels that they need to add their own words, their own personal requests to the Amidah, they have to do that. Well, wait. Everybody agree that if you feel that you still something that you need to ask God, and it's not somehow represented, expressed in those petitions, you need to do that. Question becomes when? Where in the Amidah? Okay? So opinion number one says, well, depends on the theme. And make sure that it fits within the theme of the blessing. So if it's financial, do it in the right place. If it's for intelligence or, guide, whatever, intellectual guidance, whatever, do it in the fourth blessing, etc., etc. Okay, so that's approach number one. Approach number two says, we're not sure that people can actually do that, meaning identify the theme of the blessing correctly and therefore insert their own. So let's do that in the, I think it's in the 16th blessing, which is a request that God will hear our prayer. And over there, insert. And some say, no, do that later after all the 19 blessings, but you're still in the Amidah. Because that, if you look at that page 135, you'll see that this is a personal prayer. This is actually a personal prayer taken from the Talmud. This is a personal prayer of how do you call it? Mre de Rav, the son of Rav. And that was his personal prayer. And on Yom Kippur, we're going to see a different one. The Talmud goes through several examples. The Talmud goes through several examples of personal prayers, and this is one of them. So similar to that, some say insert your own personal prayer only at that particular place. Okay? You have a choice. Okay. Moving on. Let's talk about, since we already discussed in length the first three and the last three, when, because we discussed that on Shabbat, let's zoom for a second on the middle, on the 13 petitions in the middle. So there are a couple of approaches, two main approaches to look at them. That the first six of the 13th, meaning 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, are private petitions. And then 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 are communal requests. And then number 16 is a kind of general request, kind of summary of all those 12 petitions. Okay, 6 plus 1. Okay, so that's one approach to look at that. A different approach says, no. 4, 5, and 6 are spiritual needs. 7, 8, 9 are physical needs. 10, 11, 12 are national needs. Then 13 through 15 is the outcome of the national need. And then again, 16 is the summary or kind of like the conclusion of all those. So you can look at that either groups of 3 or groups of 6. Okay. Who composed them? Where this is coming from? These are not verses from the Bible. Yeah, we have a lot of hints or references to verses of the Bible, but this is definitely not Bible. So those blessings were composed, written by Anshe Knesset Agdola. The members of the Great Assembly. Who is the most famous member of the Great Assembly? No, that's way before his time. Way before him. He was the very last. He was the very, very last. Shimon Tzaddik Hayam Misheyarei Anshe Knesset Agdola. He was the very, 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 very last. Mordechai, from the story of Esther. Okay, so it's very, very ancient. Okay, very, very ancient. Again, we don't know what part. I mean, check this out. We're talking about like a period of a couple of hundreds of years. Yeah, so we don't know exactly when, but they was the people that composed that stuff. Okay, let's delve in. Yeah.
Possibly it was composed by other people earlier on.
So some of the stuff we know that they composed, like for example, well, actually, some of the stuff they composed, some of the stuff they added based on oral tradition that was before. We don't really know work or whether it was also adding stuff or rewrite. I don't think we really know. Yeah. Look, but when it comes to everything, by the way, in Tefillah, we always rely on, and also, by the way, halacha, on some earlier traditions. Okay, even if when we talk about the Mishnah, when we talk about the Mishnah, even like our earliest rabbinic source, the Mishnah is already based on certain traditions that were already passed, right? Stuff like started from the Torah, and actually some suggest that even the Torah was given when there was already like stuff going on, certain traditions, right? I don't know, whoever, I gave a shir a couple of times about matzah, the first matzah. And I basically talk about this idea that matzah started way before the Exodus, right? So from the times of Abraham and Lot. So there was this concept, there were concepts of things that were part of our tradition already even before the times of the Torah. The Midrash talks about the Bnei Israel in Mitzrayim, that why were they saved? They didn't change their custom, they didn't change their name, they didn't change their clothes, they didn't. Okay, what does it mean? Torah was not given yet. They had traditions, let's call it, whatever that is. I'm not so sure exactly what that is. Or even like the famous debate that we have in the Talmud about tefillot, right? We spoke about it several times, that there's a debate whether the tefillot parallel the korbanot or parallel the actions of the patriarchs. And we say that Shachrit is Abraham, Isaac is Mincha, Jacob is Mariv, right? And the Gemara goes out to explain that. So the concept of davening in some way, I don't know what it is, turning to God morning, afternoon, and evening already comes from our patriarchs. What did they say? I have no idea. Probably with time, certain texts started to evolve. You know, if a father teaches, the children, said, look, well, I say, thank you, God, for the food. So, okay, and then it's being passed on, or whatever there is something there. And I would say that probably by the time it comes to the Anshe Knesset Agdolah, they're dealing with those traditions. And they're taking all those traditions and they're standardizing things and they're adding things and adding and editing and composing and whatever, and make it into a standard text. Okay. So, how do we start? Well, we'll go back to page 109. We start every Amidah, start with a pasuk, with a verse. A verse from Psalm 51. Hashem, sefatai tiftach ufi agid tiratecha. Lord, open my lips so that my mouth may declare your praise. Okay. I said it's taken from Psalm 51. Anyone knows what's the context? Anyone? No. Okay. Yes.
Okay. So it is David's response.
Correct.
To Atanadi.
Excellent.
Admonition over
the whole Batsheva affair, exactly. So he understands, he understands what he did, and he basically says to God, God, help me, open my mouth in an honest prayer. And what we say here, God, I need to express myself, right? That's the whole idea of tefillah. I need to express myself. Open my lips, open my mouth, so I'll be able to do that adequately or properly. Help me, free me from my limitations. How many times we want to say something and we just can't? How many times have we found ourselves like in a situation you want to say something to somebody and you just can't? And that's exactly the problem that we want to acknowledge here. When we talk to God, this is like your one-on-one with God. It's a very precious time. You can't hold back. You can't hold back. So you need to talk to God. So you ask God, I often call it, pray for a moment before you pray. Okay, this is what this verse is all about. I ask God, open my mouth so I can actually talk to you. Remove all those barriers. Okay, And with that, we go into the first blessing. First blessing, avot, or as I mentioned before in liberal liturgies, avot ve'imahot. It's a big deal. It's a big deal in the last, whatever, 25 years or so. Anyone who's interested in learning about that, there's a wonderful article written by a friend of mine discussing this idea, whether we can include the matriarchs, and if so, in what conditions, and what, really thoughtful, very, very in-depth discussion. If you want, I can send you the article. I have it somewhere. Okay.
The first introduced the matrix.
The first was Reform Movement. I want to say it was somewhere in the 80s. Maybe late. I mean, it's like, I think we see it in Gates of Prayer, so maybe even like late 70s. Yeah. It is recent, like the whole idea of gender sensitive and like, how it impacts our language. It's a new thing. When Maxine grew up,
It used to be taken for granted. It would be said in the mail, but it meant everybody. And now that's no longer acceptable.
Correct.
Yeah.
right? So, okay. We call it patriarchs. Why am I starting with the patriarchs?
That's what we did.
No, we didn't do anything. We're talking about the specifically, we say the God of Abraham, God of Isaac, and God of Jacob. These are the patriarchs. Okay, so why am I starting with that?
People that people could relate to.
People can relate to. I can relate to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I'm like, it's very hard to relate to them. This is how our religion started. Okay, now you're getting somewhere.
Through Abraham accepted Hashem.
Okay, so now you're onto something. So when you go, you're gonna talk to your boss, right? Let's go back to the same example, and you want that raise. And we said at the beginning, you say, well, you're such a wonderful manager and blah, blah, blah. And, okay. What if this is, a company that is owned by a family. And you say, my dad worked here for 40 years. My grandfather worked here. I'm like working here. It's the entire family. We're so dedicated to you, blah, blah, blah. This is what we do here. You know why I'm approaching you, God? I'm the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. You had a special relationship with them. It's a yichus. Okay? You had such a special relationship with them. And because of that special relationship, I come and talk to you. Okay, so that's one approach. A different approach says, part of them, it's the same idea. Part of them is in me. I'm their descendant. So if you had that relationship with them, it means that you have that relationship with me as well. Okay, it's taking the previous idea one step further. Okay, in Chassidut, there's this concept of the spark of their soul is part of me, and because of that, I can approach you. Fine. So we say, "Blessed are you, Lord, our God, and God of our fathers, God of Abraham, God of Isaac, God of Jacob." Okay. The great, mighty, awesome God, God Most High, who bestows act of loving kindness and creates all, who remembers the loving kindness of the fathers and will bring a redeemer to their children's children. Who are the children's children? Us. For the sake of his name in love. So we have Eloheinu v'Eloi Avotenu. Right? We say, "Blessed are you, Lord," beginning, "our God and God of our fathers." Why? Why can't we say just like our God? Why the God of our God and the God of our fathers?
Like added benefit that we get was the tradition to be. Kind of expressing it.
Okay. Okay. But everybody agree that there's a difference between Eloheinu and Eloi Avotenu. Right, it's more personal. So I have my relationship with God, but I have also a different type of relationship with God because of my family. Think of that, like, let's assume that you have a relative and you have a particular relationship with that relative. And that relationship is because of your personal connection with that person. Let's assume that you're close, or maybe neighbors, or whatever that is. But on the other hand, it's also a relationship that has to do with the fact that you're related, or somebody that is related to you that you work with, your co-workers, but you also related. So you have, like, someone, like, I remember when the kids were younger, it was difficult for them to understand that, like, some people call me Cantor, Rabbi, and some people call me Arik. It's like I said, yeah, it really depends. Like, if we're having friends over or whatever, that's just Arik. But if it's in the shul, sometimes people call me, like, Rabbi, Cantor, whatever. For the kids, it was very difficult to understand that. And it actually came up just like recently. One of my kids went to the doctor, and the doctor is actually a father of one of the kids in class. And so when they were discussing, my wife and this doctor discussing carpools, I think his name is Yosef or something like that. Okay, it was just Yosef. But when they went to the office, it was doctor. So, okay, you have your own relationship, but you have also the relationship of that you receive from your father, and
never talk directly to the teacher to say Hamore.
correct, in the third person. Correct, in the third person, yeah. Yeah. So there's another, like, we can talk also about the God, the God meaning the Torah, Judaism, knowledge, everything, my DNA, everything that I received from my fathers, from my teachers, etc., all that kind of stuff, versus the Elokeinu, that God is my God. It means it's what the stuff that I acquire by myself. And my religious personality that I acquire by myself, that is my God. That means my relationship with God versus what I've accumulated throughout my teachers, my parents, whatever, family traditions, all that kind of stuff. That's a different type of relationship that I have with God. Okay, so therefore it's that those two elements.
Is that acceptable? Because some would say that's a sign of God.
Why?
Think you have a special.
I hope you have special relationship, and your special relationship with God is unique. And each one of us has special relationship with God. You know, if you're a good parent, right, then every child believes that they are the favorite, right? Because they all have special relationship with you. You're the same person, they're different, right? Same thing, same goes here. Everybody has their own relationship with God, but this is a little bit different. This is like the two types, like, the God is my God and the God of my fathers, and it's not the same. Yeah, God is God. It's the same God, but the vehicle with which I approach God, that I experience God, is different, right? The way I experience God as an adult is different than as a child, etc. Okay.
I think when you're saying my father's, it makes him even more special. To me, it does.
Okay.
Think about it. I mean, I didn't know my father died before I was born, but he's so very special to me.
Okay.
And so, and I know my father was very religious. So he was,
That's what I'm saying. There's like always those two components. It's the God of my fathers and this is my God. Okay. One interesting thing about the end of the bracha, right? We say Baruch Atah Hashem Magen Avraham, shield of Abraham. If you look in liberal liturgy, you'll see Magen Avraham ve'ezrat Sarah. Just to, if you add the matriarchs, then and that was like in that article that my friend talked about. He said, no, that's a problem. It can't allow that. He said like that doesn't work. He has no problem with adding the imahot. He's an Orthodox rabbi. He says, like, that's not a problem to add Elohei Sarah Rivka Rechav Eleh. That's not a problem at all. Somebody wants to say it, do it. But to say Magen Avraham Bezrat Sarah, I said that's a problem. Why? Because the Talmud talks about, forget about the Talmud. Let's go before the Talmud. Remember the dream, the famous dream that Abraham has? I'm going to the source of that, Magen Avraham, the shield of Abraham. Where this is coming from? What's the source of that term, the shield of Abraham? Is it translated here? Shield of Abraham, yeah. What is the source of that? Anyone knows?
he wanted to sacrifice Isaac.
No.
Abraham?
Before. Exactly. Brit Ben Abetarim. It is. Brit Ben Abetarim. Brit Ben Abetarim, that vision that Abraham has, and God tells him, you're going to have many, many descendants, and the land is going to be yours, all that stuff. Right. And then God says, Anochi magen lach. Anochi magen lach. Abraham is asking, just before that vision, before Brit Ben Abetarim, before that dream, Abraham is asking, I don't have children. V'anochi olech hariri. What can you give me? And God says, V'anochi magen lach. I'm your magen, shield. And then it happens. And then vayapel Elohim tardema al Avraham. And Abraham falls asleep and has that vision that Brit Ben. Okay. And because of that, the Talmud talks about that, and the Talmud says this is the source for this Chatima. for this conclusion of the bracha, it says Magen Avraham, Magen Lach, when God says Anochi Magen Lach. And not only that, the Gemara says that at that time, God promised Abraham, Becha Chotmin. It means, yes, we're going to include not only you, it's going to be Isaac and Jacob as well in the blessing. However, it's going to be only with your name is the conclusion of the blessing. Not that we don't say Baruch Ata Hashem Magen Avraham, Yitzchak veYaakov. We say only Magen Avraham. That was the promise that God made to Abraham. It's a special promise that God made them. It's like when you have a kid and you make a special promise to that kid and he said, you'll get something special. Okay, try not to follow with that. You're going to be in trouble. So, and because of that, my friend says, that's a problem. That was a promise made to Abraham specifically. You can't include Sarah. She's not part of that. So if you want to talk about the merit of the fathers and the matriarchs, by all means. Do you want to put them as couples, Elohei, Rivka, Sarah, whatever, fine. You want to say that in the merit of when we say Eloheinu ve'Elohei Avotenu ve'imotenu, it's like it's a God, the God of our ancestors, like our patriarchs and matriarchs, fine, no problem. But this is something personal. It's not something national. It's not something that, and therefore, his conclusion was not to add that, but you can add the matriarchs earlier in the bracha, which I thought was very, 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 very interesting. Okay.
That particular thing is the first time he actually promises it as a child.
Yes. Yes. Because up until now, he says, "V'anochi olech hariri," and he talks about that furthermore, and he says, "V'hinei yoresh oti ben beiti," meaning Eliezer is going to be my successor. So, and then God tells him, no, you're going to have descendants. And I think because it's so a little bit vague, God doesn't tell him it's going to be from Sarah and all that kind of stuff. This is why he, in the beginning, when he has Ishmael, he thinks, okay, that's the fulfillment of that promise. He has a child. Only later on, he is told, no. You're going to have another child. Okay. So my question is already 12. Should we delve into the next blessing or just leave it for next time? Oh, you have the luncheon upstairs. Okay, so we should stop here. I forgot you have the luncheon upstairs. It's today. So we'll meet next week, same time, same place, hopefully. I want to